Here the first concept is vector product or cross product of two vectors. 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 See here, what is this cross product of two vectors and how can we calculate the cross product of two vectors? So let us suppose this is a vector and this one is a b vector. The cross product of these two vectors is denoted by a vector cross b vector. So it can be read it as a vector cross b vector, and it's defined by magnitude of a vector into magnitude of b vector into sine theta into n cap. So n cap is a unit vector perpendicular to both a vector and b vector, and theta is a angle between two vectors a vector and b vector. So when you are finding the a vector cross b vector, so a vector cross b vector, we have one of the unit vector n cap which is perpendicular to both a vector and b vector. That is what? So this vector, see here. So this vector is perpendicular to b vector as well as perpendicular to a vector, and this unit vector along which vector? Along the a vector. So along which vector? A vector cross b vector. I hope all of you understanding. Cross product of two vectors a and b is denoted by a vector cross b vector, and it is defined by magnitude of a vector into magnitude of b vector into sine theta into n cap, where n cap is unit vector along a vector cross b vector and which is perpendicular to both a vector and b vector. It means that if n cap is perpendicular to both a vector and b vectors, it is along a vector cross b vector. It means a vector cross b vector is also perpendicular to both a vector and b vector. What is the geometrical meaning of cross product of two vectors a and b vector? A vector cross b vector is a vector which is perpendicular to both a vector and b vector. I hope all of you understanding. See here, what is a vector cross b vector? A vector cross b vector. A vector cross b vector is a vector which is perpendicular to both a vector and b vector. And here, when we are finding a vector cross b vector, we are moving in this direction from a to b. So when we find the value of b vector cross a vector, so direction from b to a vector, again here also we have one of the unit vector perpendicular to both a vector and b vector, that is C. So direction of n cap is upwards direction. So this one is a upward direction n cap vector, and if you find the b vector cross a vector, so direction is downwards. So this is what? Minus n cap. So minus n cap is a unit vector along b vector cross a vector. So this vector is what? B vector cross a vector. I hope all of you understanding. So when direction changes, sign changes. So it means that we call it as A cross B is not equal to B cross A. So it means the second point here we need to observe here. A vector cross B vector is equal to negative of B vector cross A vector. I hope all of you understanding. So for A vector and B vector, we have two unit perpendicular vectors, that is n cap and minus n cap. And also we have two perpendicular vectors, that is A vector cross B vector and B vector cross A vector. So both of these two vectors are perpendicular to A vector as well as B vector. I hope all of you understood. Now see here, the third point we need to observe here. The third point we have to observe here is, that is here, if the value of theta is equals to 0, if the angle between these two vectors a vector and b vector is 0 degree, then a vector cross b vector is equals to magnitude of a vector into magnitude of b vector into sine 0, and the value of sine 0 is 0. So it means a vector cross b vector is equals to magnitude of a vector into magnitude of b vector into sine 0 into n cap. The value of sine 0 is 0. So 0 multiplied with the unit vector. So therefore a vector cross b vector is equals to 0 vector when angle between two vectors is equals to 0. Hope all of you understanding. See here. Here you need to observe one more thing. Suppose this is a vector. Suppose this is a vector. Angle made by the a vector with itself, angle made by the vector a with itself is equal to 0 degree. So therefore we can say that a vector cross a vector is equals to 0 vector, or b vector cross b vector is equal to 0 vector. It means if the angle between two vectors is 0 degree, then we say that two vectors are parallel. So because every vector is parallel to itself, every vector is parallel to itself, when angle is 0, when angle is 0, then a vector is parallel with itself. It means if the cross product of any two vectors is 0, then we say that two given vectors are parallel to each other. I hope all of you understanding. If the angle between two vectors is 0 vector, then that two given vectors are parallel to itself. I hope all of you understanding. And fourth point you need to observe here is, if the angle between two vectors a vector and b vector, if the angle between a vector and b vector is equals to pi by 2, that is equals to 90 degree, then the value of a vector cross b vector is equals to magnitude of a vector, magnitude of a vector into magnitude of b vector into sine theta means sine 90 degree into n cap. So therefore the value of sine 90 is 1. So a vector cross b vector is equals to magnitude of a vector into magnitude of b vector into n cap, where n cap is a unit vector perpendicular to both a vector and b vector. I hope all of you understanding. Now see here, the fifth point here we need to observe is, now what? Fifth point. So fifth point here we need to observe here is, fifth point. As you know that a vector cross b vector equals to magnitude of a vector into magnitude of b vector into sine theta into n cap. So it means magnitude of a vector cross b vector is equals to, what is the fifth point? Magnitude of the a vector cross b vector. Magnitude of a vector cross b vector is equals to, so we are applying entire magnitude here. So magnitude of the magnitude a vector, simply we write it as magnitude of a vector and magnitude of b vector into sine theta into magnitude of n cap. And we know that n cap is a unit vector. So if it is unit vector, its magnitude is equals to 1. So into 1. Therefore, magnitude of a vector cross b vector is equals to what? Magnitude of a vector into magnitude of b vector into sine theta. I hope all of you understanding. And from this sixth point is, sin theta is equals to, sin theta is equals to magnitude of a vector cross b vector divided by magnitude of a vector into magnitude of b vector. I just shifted this magnitude of a vector into magnitude of b vector to left side. It becomes what? Divided by magnitude of a vector into magnitude of b vector to the magnitude of a vector plus b vector. And this is the sign of the angle between two vectors a vector and b vector. I hope all of you understanding. Now see here, the formula to find the unit vector. Formula to find the unit vector perpendicular to both a vector and b vector. That is what n cap. So from this first point, n cap can be written as, n cap is equals to, nodri, a vector cross b vector, a vector cross b vector divide by, ಇದನ್ನ ಆ ಕಡೆ ಶಿಫ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ರಿ, magnitude of a vector into magnitude of b vector into sin theta. It means n cap is equals to a vector cross b vector, a vector cross b vector divided by magnitude of a vector into magnitude of b vector into sin theta. Is it equal to magnitude of the a vector cross b vector? So divided by what? Magnitude of a vector cross b vector. I hope all of you understood. The formula for n cap is a vector cross b vector divided by magnitude of the vector a vector cross b vector. So this is the most important formula. From this formula you are going to get 3-mark questions in your annual examination. You are going to get the 3-mark questions in your annual examination. That is what? N cap is equals to a vector cross b vector divided by magnitude of a vector cross b vector. I hope all of you understood. And the 8th point is, as you know that unit vectors along x-axis, y-axis and z-axis. Suppose this is a x-axis, y-axis and z-axis. We know that unit vector along x-axis is I cap and unit vector along y-axis is j cap and unit vector along z-axis is k cap. And we know that x-axis, y-axis and z-axis are mutually perpendicular to each other. It means that I cap, j cap and k cap are also unit vectors perpendicular to each other. So it means the value of I cross I, value of I cross I. See here from this point, A cross A is equals to what? 0 vector. Similarly, I cross I, angle made by the I cap with I cap is equal to 0 degree. When angle between two vectors is equals to 0, then cross product of that two vector is equals to 0 vector. It means j cap cross j cap equal to k cap cross k cap is equals to 0 vector. I hope all of you understand it. Now see here, value of I cap cross j cap and then j cap cross k cap, j cap cross k cap and then k cap cross I cap, k cap cross I cap. As you know that I, j and k are mutually perpendicular to each other. It means the angle between I cap and j cap is 90 degree. So from this 4th point, if the angle between any two vectors is equals to 90 degree, then cross product of that two vectors is equals to product of their magnitudes into unit vector perpendicular to A and B vectors. It means I cap cross j cap is equals to, because I and j are mutually perpendicular to each other, so it is equal to product of their magnitudes, magnitude of I into magnitude of j into unit vector perpendicular to both I and j is what? K cap. Therefore, I cap cross j cap is equals to magnitude of I cap into magnitude of j cap into k cap. So k cap is a unit vector perpendicular to both I and j. As you know that I cap and j cap are the unit vectors, therefore their magnitude is equals to 1. So 1 into k cap is equals to what? K cap. So therefore, I cap cross j cap is equals to k cap. Similarly, j cap cross k cap is equals to unit vector perpendicular to both j and k, that is what? I cap. And similarly, k cross I is equals to unit vector perpendicular to both k and I, that is what? J cap. So by using this, as you know that in the first point only, see here, A cross B is equal to minus of B cross A vector. So therefore, if I cross J is equals to K, then definitely J cross I is equals to minus K. And then K cross J, opposite of these two, K cross J is equals to what? Minus of I cap. And similarly, I cross K is equals to minus of j cap. Hope all of understanding. So this can be remembered by using one of the circular rules here. Suppose along this circle I can take in a cyclic order I cap, j cap and k cap. See here, I cross j is equal to k cap, j cross k is equals to I cap and then k cross I is equal to j cap. Similarly, in reverse order, I cross k is equals to minus j cap. We are moving in reverse direction. I cross k is equals to minus j cap, and k cross j is equals to minus I cap, and j cross I is equals to minus k cap. I hope all of you understood. Last point you need to understand in this concept is method of calculating the cross product of two vectors. Method of calculating the cross product of two vectors. Let's see. Let's suppose a vector is equals to I cap plus j cap plus 2k cap, and b vector is equals to 2i minus j plus k. Then find a vector cross b vector. Then find a vector cross b vector. So cross product of two vectors is calculated by using the determinant method. By using the determinant method, in which the first row is unit vectors, that is I cap, j cap and k cap. And the second row is coefficient of I, j, k in a vector. Here the coefficient of I, j, k in a vector is 1, 1, 2. So second row is 1, 1, 2. And third row is coefficient of ijk in b vector, that is what, 2 minus 1 1. So 2 minus 1 1. I hope all of you understanding. Now see here, a vector cross b vector is equals to a vector cross b vector is equals to, already you know how to calculate the determinant value, plus minus plus. So I cap into 1 into 1 1 minus minus 1 into 2 is minus 2, minus into minus plus 2, minus j into, deleting first row second column, 1 into 1 1 minus 2 into 2 is 4, plus k cap into, plus k cap into, see here, plus k cap into, deleting the first row third column, 1 into minus 1 is minus 1 minus 2 into 1 is 2. Therefore a vector cross b vector is equals to 1 plus 2 is 3, so 3 I cap, minus 1 minus 4 is minus 3, minus into minus plus 3j, and then minus 1 minus 2 is minus 3, minus into plus minus 3k. So this is what cross product of a vector and b vector. I hope all of you understood. Cross product of any two vectors is calculated by using the what, determinant method, where the first row is unit vectors I, j and k, and second row is coefficient of I, j, k in the first vector, and third row is coefficient of I, j, k in the second vector. I hope all of you understood this concept, cross product or vector product of the two vectors. So I repeat once here, cross product of two vectors is denoted by a vector cross b vector, and it is defined by magnitude of a vector, magnitude of b vector into sine theta into n cap, where theta is the angle between the vectors a vector and b vector, and n cap is the unit vector along a vector cross b vector, which is perpendicular to both a vector and b vector. If n cap is unit vector along a vector cross b vector, a vector cross b vector is also perpendicular to a vector and b vector. And one more thing, when we are calculating a vector cross b vector, n cap is a unit vector perpendicular to a and b vectors. If we change the direction, instead of finding a vector cross b vector, if you are finding b vector cross a vector, then direction of the vector changes. And the third point is, if theta is equals to 0, then a vector cross b vector is equals to 0 vector. So when cross product of two vectors is 0, we call that two vectors are parallel to each other. And when theta is equals to 90 degree, cross product of two vectors is equals to product of their magnitudes into unit vector perpendicular to both the vectors a vector and b vector. And magnitude of a vector cross b vector is equals to magnitude of a vector, magnitude of b vector into sine theta into magnitude of n cap, where magnitude of n cap is 1. And by this sine theta formula is magnitude of a vector cross b vector divided by magnitude of a vector into magnitude of b vector. And the formula for n cap is a vector cross b vector divided by magnitude of this magnitude of a vector, magnitude of b vector into sine theta, which is equals to magnitude of a vector cross b vector. So n cap is equals to a vector cross b vector divided by magnitude of a vector cross b vector. And the value of I cross I, j cross j and k cross k is equal to 0 vector, because they are parallel to each other. And I cross j value, j cross k value and k cross I Because I, j, k are mutually perpendicular to each other. Therefore, cross product of I and j is unit vector perpendicular to I and j, which is k cap. And j cross k, unit vector perpendicular to j and k is I cap. And unit vector perpendicular to k and I is j. Therefore, k cross I is j cap. So if we change the direction, sign of the vector changes. So therefore, j cross I is equals to minus of k cap. K cross j is minus of I cap, and I cross k is minus of j cap. I hope all of you understood. And cross product of any two vectors is always calculated by using the determinant method, where cross product of any two vectors is always a vector quantity. So answer of the cross product of two vectors is obtained in IJK format. So that's why cross product of any two vector is always vector. So that's why we call it as vector product of two vectors. That's why we call this concept is a vector product of two vectors. I hope all of you understood. Let's start the second concept. Second concept is area of a triangle. Area of a triangle. So this is also one of the important concept. From this concept, we are going to get 2 more questions. See here, what is the formula to find area of the triangle in vector system? To understand this, let us consider one triangle. So let PQR is a triangle where A vector and B vectors are the two adjacent sides of the triangle. And here we need to find the area of the triangle PQR, where A vector and B vector are the adjacent sides of the triangle PQR, where base is QR, and the length of QR is equals to magnitude of A vector, and similarly length of QP vector, it is equals to magnitude of B vector. Now to find the area of this triangle PQR, already we know one of the formula in geometrical system, that is what? Area of the triangle is equals to half into base into height. So in this triangle PQR, already we know that base of the triangle is equals to magnitude of A vector. But here we need to find the height of the triangle. So to calculate the height of the triangle PQR, I am going to draw a perpendicular line from the vertex P to the base of the triangle QR. So this PS is perpendicular to QR and it represents the height of the triangle PQR. Now we need to length of this PS. So to calculate length of this PS, let us consider theta is the angle between A vector and B vector. And for this theta, PS acts like opposite side and QS is the adjacent side and QP is the hypotenuse side. So in this right angle triangle PQS, hypotenuse is known, length of hypotenuse is magnitude of B vector, but we don't know the length of opposite side. When hypotenuse is known but opposite is unknown, to calculate the length of opposite, we use the trigonometric ratio, that is what? Sine. Because we know that sine theta is equals to opposite divided by hypotenuse, where opposite is PS divided by hypotenuse is QP and its length is magnitude of B vector. So magnitude of B. Now by the cross multiplication, PS is equals to magnitude of B vector into sine theta. So what is PS? PS is height of the triangle, that is H is equals to magnitude of B vector into sine theta. Now use the values of base QR and height H in equation number 1. So therefore equation 1 implies area of the triangle A is equals to half into base is magnitude of A vector into height is magnitude of B vector into sine theta. So therefore area is equals to half into the value of magnitude of A vector into magnitude of B vector into sine theta is equal to magnitude of A vector cross B vector. So therefore the formula to find the area of the triangle when A vector and B vectors are the adjacent sides of the triangle, then its formula is half into magnitude of A vector cross B vector. I hope all of you understood. Now the third concept and the last concept, that is what? Area of the parallelogram. Third concept is area of parallelogram. Area of parallelogram. Area of parallelogram. So this is also important concept. From this concept, you are going to get 2 mark questions in your annual examination. So they may be asked from the concept area of the triangle or from area of the parallelogram in your annual examination. Now see here, what is the formula for area of the parallelogram in vector system? So let us consider a parallelogram. Let us consider a parallelogram. Let us consider a parallelogram PQRS. PQRS, where PQ is equals to A vector and PS is equals to B vector. Where A vector and B vectors are the two adjacent sides of the parallelogram PQRS. And we know that area of the parallelogram in geometry, area of the parallelogram in geometry is base into height. Here base of the parallelogram is PQ and its length is magnitude of A vector. So length of PQ is equals to magnitude of A vector and length of PS is equals to magnitude of B vector. So to find the area of the parallelogram, we need base and height. Already we know that base of the parallelogram, that is PQ, which is equals to magnitude of A vector. We need to find the height of the parallelogram. For height of the parallelogram, here I am going to draw a perpendicular line from the vertex S to the base of the parallelogram. Now observe here, PST is one of the right angle triangle. And let us suppose theta is the angle between A vector and B vector. So for this theta, this ST acts like a opposite side and PS is a hypotenuse side and PT is a adjacent side. So in the right triangle PST, we know hypotenuse, length of hypotenuse is magnitude of B vector, but we need to calculate length of opposite side. When opposite is unknown, hypotenuse is known. To calculate the length of opposite, we use the trigonometric ratio sine, because the definition of sine theta is opposite divided by hypotenuse, where opposite side is ST divided by hypotenuse side is PS and its length is magnitude of B vector. Therefore, by the cross multiplication, ST is equals to magnitude of B vector into sine theta. And here ST is what? Height of the parallelogram. So H is equals to what? Magnitude of B vector into sine theta. I hope all of you understanding. Now use the values base PQ and height H in area of the parallelogram. That is equation number 1. So equation 1 implies area is equals to base, length of base is magnitude of A vector into height of the parallelogram is magnitude of B vector into sine theta. Therefore, area of the parallelogram is equals to magnitude of A vector into magnitude of B vector into sine theta is equals to magnitude of A vector cross B vector, and which is a required formula to calculate the area of the parallelogram, where A and B are the adjacent sides of the parallelogram. I hope all of you understood today's 3 concepts: vector product or cross product of 2 vectors, area of the triangle and area of the parallelogram.